Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Introduction to Planning for the Future, Important Documents and Conversations to Have When Facing Cancer, led by Caroline Cubbinson. This program is hosted by the Blum Resource Center. Over at the Blum, we are grateful to Caroline for joining us today. The recording of this session will be posted on our Blum YouTube playlist and our Blum Digital Resource Center. For those of you watching live, if you have any questions related to today's program, please feel free to utilize the chat feature throughout the session. At the end of the session, your questions in the chat will be used to moderate the Q&A. If you have any other questions or would like more information about resources and programs offered through the Blum, please visit our website at www.dana-farber.org/resource center or email us at blum_center@dfci.harvard.edu. Thank you all for joining us. I will now pass the workshop on to Dr. Cubbinson.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Sierra. And it is my absolute joy and pleasure to be able to join you all today for this really important conversation. So thank you for those who are joining. Today, I'd like to talk about how we can plan for the future as you're living with cancer and the really important conversations and documents that can help hopefully relieve some of the pressure from these really challenging moments in your life. I am a palliative care doctor here at Dana-Farber and see patients both in the outpatient clinic as well as when patients are in the hospital. And what I've learned is that having conversations about what you would want if you get seriously ill is really, really hard. And there are so many different factors that make these conversations hard to have. But some of the top ones that come to my mind and that I've heard patients or loved ones say is, for many people, it's hard to even imagine a moment when things could be, more challenging than they are right now. Sometimes many of my patients are feeling well, and so it's even just difficult to imagine a time when you would be very sick. Additionally, I think a lot of patients don't want to worry or place burden on their families or loved ones by having difficult conversations. They worry that having that conversation might make their family members sad or disappointed, and they want to protect their loved ones at all costs. Furthermore, I think that there's this thought, of maybe talking about these things could mean that you're not confident in the treatments that you're getting, or that it might send the wrong message to your doctors that, gosh, you might be giving up, or something else like that. So I think sometimes it's a mix of reasons why, sometimes it's just one or two, but overall, these are tough conversations to have. What I've also learned in my work as a palliative care doctor is that unfortunately, not enough people are having these conversations with their loved ones. And the truth is that it always feels like it's too soon to talk about these things until it's unfortunately too late. And the good thing is that it's easier to talk about these things when you are feeling well and when it does feel a little bit more removed from the situation. And talking about these things can actually be a gift that you can give to your loved ones and your families, so that in the future, if they're ever called upon to need to help make decisions for you in your care, it's actually relieving sort of that burden. They would know what you would want if you could speak for yourself in that moment. And so I think it's a beautiful gift that patients can give their caregiving network. So all of this comes down to a fundamental question, which is what matters most to you as an individual, as a person? What are the things that you're hoping you can continue to enjoy? What are the specific activities in your life that bring you joy, that make your life feel like it's quality time? Are there things that you're looking forward to in the near future, special events or celebrations that you'd like to be present for or participating in a specific way? Are there other just, daily activity things that maybe don't seem very big, but are really meaningful, like spending dinners at a table with your family, or, being able to see your kids and your grandkids go to school. And one of the things that is important and crucial to these conversations about planning for a moment when you might be sicker is trying to understand what are the things that you value most in your life, and then how can we align all your care to give you the best opportunity of being able to continue enjoying those things. I want to go over two different resources that I think many of my patients have been using and finding helpful to start to just think about this and organize their thoughts. The first one I'll mention is something called the Conversation Project. Okay. And if you were to go to your internet browser, you could just type in the conversation project in any search engine and it would pop up the website for the conversation project. This is, a website that has a lot of really practical tools and almost like a workbook that you can go through individually before then, involving other people into the conversation with you. But it's a lot of sort of reflective questions and also practical tips on how to set up a conversation for the most success. It helps you think through who in your life might be the important person to have that conversation with, what kind of setting would be the best setting to support you and that other person the most during that conversation, and then what are the things that you would want to cover in a conversation about sort of your wishes if you were to be sicker. I think it's really easy and it's available online for free and worth looking into for sure. So I recommend you check it out after we finish today's webinar. The other one that I'd like to mention is one called Five Wishes. And this is more of what would be considered like a living will, where it's similar to the conversation project. It has you sort of reflect and think through, in different situations, what are the things that would matter most to you? Who would you want to help, guide decision making in the event that you were ever unable to yourself? And what kind of treatments would or wouldn't you want, depending on what was going on in different situations? Also very practical, I think accessible. I think the language is really easy for people to sort of follow and understand. And I think a lot of patients really enjoy thinking through and working through the Five Wishes workbook. Five Wishes is also available online, and I believe through the Blum Center, we also have hard copies. Both of these resources come in different languages other than English as well. So once you've sort of reflected, what are sort of the important things and the important people in your life when it comes to facing a serious disease like cancer, there are some really practical documentation steps that I recommend all my patients take. The first one is a healthcare proxy form. Okay. So a healthcare proxy is, a person that you decide is the person you would trust to make medical decisions on your behalf in the event that you were unable to make the decision for yourself. And it would only be in the scenario that your medical team felt did not have the ability to make decisions for yourself. That is when they would call upon your healthcare proxy to help guide decision making. Really, every person over the age of 18 should have a healthcare proxy because we never know when we might be in a situation when medical decisions need to be made. And we want our medical teams to be able to turn to someone that we trust in those moments. The most important thing, though, is to note that the healthcare proxy or your healthcare proxy agent that you choose should be guiding medical decisions based on what they believe you would want for yourself, not what they would want for themselves. And so, more important than just assigning a healthcare proxy is to actually have conversations with this person about what kind of care or treatments you would want for yourself in different kinds of situations. The other thing that I think is important to note is that a healthcare proxy's sort of authority and power to make decisions is really only limited to medical decisions in scenarios that the patient is deemed not able to make decisions for themselves. And the important distinction is that it doesn't cover other decisions, in other areas of your life, like financial or estate planning decisions. Those need to be addressed separately. So if you don't already have a healthcare proxy and you're over the age of 18, please get one done. You can get one done anytime you come into clinic. We have ample healthcare proxy forms available on all the medical floors of the Dana-Farber campuses. And you can also get one done if you're ever hospitalized. It just needs to be signed in the presence of two witnesses other than the person you are, defining as your healthcare proxy. And so two independent witnesses need to verify that you are sort of making the decision to assign that person as your proxy. Now, the other documentation pieces that are important might be more relevant for people who, as they're thinking through their healthcare options, might think about sort of life-sustaining therapies in the sense of like cardiopulmonary resuscitation or CPR, breathing machines, dialysis, feeding tubes, and artificial feeding. Are there any of those sorts of treatments that you would not want. And for people who feel strongly and know that they would not want certain kinds of treatments, there's another piece of documentation that can be important to help your medical team and those around you who are helping provide care for you know those wishes clearly. This document is called in Massachusetts, it's called the MOLST form, or the Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment form. Other states have similar forms, but these forms are basically uh, created together between a patient and a physician, where as a patient and with your physician, you fill out this document. It's two sides. So on the first side, which you can see here on the left hand of the screen, it has different areas where if you're clear that you would not want to go through cardiopulmonary resuscitation or be attached to a breathing machine, you could make those wishes known and then you would sign it. And then your doctor would also, or nurse practitioner or physician assistant would also sign that form, sort of validating that a doctor has talked about these things with you, or one of your medical professionals has talked about these things with you and is verifying that those are in fact your wishes. The back side of it, which is what you can see on the right-hand side, goes into a little bit more detail about other sort of life-sustaining treatments, things like dialysis or artificial nutrition with things like feeding tubes or artificial hydration like IV fluids. And so again, if there are any specific treatments that you feel strongly that you would not want, this is a good way of documenting that. What we do when patients document these wishes is that we keep a copy of it in your medical chart, but you actually take the original form back home with you. And when we print it out, it's actually on very vibrant neon pink paper. And we let patients and families know, you want to put it somewhere visible, sort of on the refrigerator or on a door in the house, because this is also going to help, emergency personnel know when they come to your home, if 911 were ever to be called, and someone came to your house to provide emergency assistance, these emergency responders are trained to look for this bright pink piece of paper to be able to honor your wishes even outside the hospital. So that's another form that you can talk to your treatment team about filling out. I think it's most relevant for people who feel strongly that they would not want specific life-sustaining therapies at end of life. And we also have them available at Dana-Farber campuses to fill out. You can choose any clinic visit or, a hospital stay to fill one out if that's what feels right to you. So the last thing that I'll mention is that because the healthcare proxy form that we talked about, the powers were really limited to medical decision making only. Sometimes I find that when patients are in the hospital for a prolonged period of time, they might have, worries on their mind or on their plate about how they're going to pay bills when they're, hospitalized, or if they need to transfer money here or there. And when someone is in the hospital and when they're unable to, participate in their daily life matters because of how sick they are, this can sometimes be tricky. And this is where something like a financial power of attorney could be really helpful for patients to have set in place, where again, you appoint someone, someone that you trust to be able to make financial decisions on your behalf. And so whether it's granting that person access to be able to pay your bills or to access your bank accounts to be able to manage your finances while you're sick or recovering. And the financial powers of attorney can be, active as soon as you sign it. So that would be like a durable power of attorney, where the moment you sign it, it's in effect, and that person would be able to have access to that kind of decision making for you. Or it could be springing, which means it would be sort of dependent on specific conditions that would have to be met first and documented and sort of proven before that person would have that authority. So I could imagine a place where having something like a springing financial power of attorney could be helpful for patients. Say if I'm in the hospital and I can't, participate in my own decision making or my own financial planning because I'm so sick that X, Y, and Z situation is going on, in that case, I want this person to be able to act on my behalf in my financial matters to make sure that, that is not a worry that I have to have at the time when I'm also dealing with medical illness. So that's something else to consider. Financial powers of attorney can be completed through, a legal platform, whether you have a personal lawyer that you work with. There are also some online legal document resources that are helpful, things like LegalZoom, to give an example, where you can look at this in more detail and consider it. So I think those are the biggest and most important documentation pieces that I can think of that I encounter in my work in my day-to-day as a palliative care doctor, sort of seeing patients and families navigate different disease and illness and, hospitalizations and being in and out of the hospital. Um, but again, the most important thing is to have these conversations with your loved ones. And talking about this now is the most important step that you can take to both protect your wishes and support and help your loved ones, um, you know, in the future, in the event that something might happen. It's sort of grounded in this where we always hope for the best. And we also want to be prepared for the unexpected. Because when we prepare for the unexpected, that's one less worry that we have on our plate, and we can continue to channel all our energy and focus on our hopes and our wishes. And so, with that, I'm going to sort of wind it down now. I think sometimes people find it helpful to check in with someone from social work or palliative care to talk about these kinds of issues. And so, if that's something that you're interested in, you can always talk to your oncologist if meeting with palliative care would benefit you. I know that our team here at Dana-Farber would be delighted to meet anyone who would want to engage with our team and learn more about what our services could offer. We really want to help support you and your loved ones through the cancer journey here at Dana-Farber as best we can. So thank you so much. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to put it in the Q&A, and I'm happy to answer anything that might come up.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cubbinson, for that important and very thoughtful program on planning for the future. As I mentioned earlier, this session was recorded and it will be posted on our Blum YouTube playlist, so please keep an eye out for that. Thank you all for joining us today. And again, if you have any questions, please drop that in the chat or the Q&A feature, and we can have Dr. Cubbinson answer them. We got a message in the chat that said, thank you very much. This was very helpful.
I'm glad it was helpful. I'm glad. Thank you for joining.